Welcome to This Week in Christian History, a podcast from the Center for Christian History at Mississippi College. The Center for Christian History is dedicated to expanding knowledge and understanding of Christian history. Our mission is to provide a scholarly, unbiased look at the events, figures, and movements that have shaped Christianity over the centuries. You can visit centerforchristianhistory.com for daily historical highlights. And each week on this podcast, we'll do a deep dive into key moments with Christian history's leading authorities. This episode of the podcast is underwritten by John Arthur Eves. First up on our list of historical highlights for the week is the death of Queen Elizabeth I. For nearly 75 years in the 1500s, England alternated between the Roman Catholic Church and the Church of England as its official church. When Queen Elizabeth I died on March 24, 1603, many questioned whether the nation would become permanently Catholic or permanently Protestant. Elizabeth's cousin and successor, James I, deemed the Church of England the official church. Next up on our list, and the subject of our deep dive, is Theodore the Studite. Pope Leo III was the first to crown a monarch when he crowned Charlemagne Holy Roman Emperor. The Pope stated that the Church no longer needed to use the icons and former saints and outlawed them. However, the Eastern Church disagreed with this, and, in an act of defiance, Theodore the Studite marched into Constantinople on March 25, 815 AD. As part of this march, Theodore and his fellow monks marched with icons on poles that were tall enough to be seen over the city walls. Last up on our list is the death of Pope Gregory XI. In the late 1300s and early 1400s, there were times at which 3 different men simultaneously claimed to be the Pope. Some of these men were stationed in Avignon, France, and not in Rome, which further complicated the situation. Pope Gregory XI was the last universally accepted of the French Avignon popes when he died on March 27, 1378. Today in our deep dive, Nick Walters, director of the Center for Christian History, talks with George Demacopoulos of Fordham University about Theodore the Studite.
All right, welcome back to another one of our episodes here for This Week in Christian History. And today our focus is on March 25th, 815, when we are going to learn more about Theodore the Studite and what was going on within the world of iconoclasm and what that's all about, particularly as it relates to the Orthodox Church. Very glad to have Dr. George Demacopoulos here hang out with us, who runs the Orthodox Christian Studies Center at Fordham, who got his PhD at UNC Chapel Hill, and even lo and behold, we find out has got a little bit of University of Tennessee in his blood as well for undergraduate pieces. So thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Well, tell us a little bit very quickly about the Orthodox Christian Studies Center. What is it that you guys focus on there?
Oh, yeah, thanks for asking. So we are the only Orthodox Christian Studies Center at a research university in the United States. And so we're interested broadly, so not just theology, in the history, thought, and culture of the entire Eastern Christian world. So, I mean, your listeners probably familiar with the Greek Orthodox Church or the Russian Orthodox Church or something like that, but we cover an even broader space than that. And I like to say that we provide funding, publication, and other resources for a kind of advanced investigation of the Orthodox Christian world writ large. So we have research fellowships, 2 book series, a peer-reviewed journal, and an online editorial forum called Public Orthodoxy, which gets a great deal of traction.
Fantastic. Well, that's right up our alley of the same kind of things that we're trying to do for this Center for Christian History, right, is to be able to bring all of those resources, hopefully in kind of one portal, so people can find the things that they're looking for as they're starting to read and study. So today, though, we are talking about our friend Theodore. So give us a little background for those who may not be aware about really what iconoclasm is or what that means to the early church.
Right. So for as long as we have evidence of early Christian behavior, we have evidence of early Christians painting or sketching images of biblical scenes of Jesus, of the saints, and so forth. Goes back to at least the early 2nd century, maybe even older than that, in the catacombs and so forth. By at least the 5th or 6th century, Christians were using some of these images in their worship services. They were lighting candles in front of icons of Jesus or the saints. They were moving incense in front of icons of images of the saints, and they were basically a prayer aid, for lack of a better word. But they weren't always, well, for even though they had these images from the beginning, there were always also some questions from the beginning as to whether or not this was appropriate. Did it transgress Moses's commandment, right? Not to have a graven image. And so there were a few individuals who had raised such concerns as early as the 4th century, but it remained the dominant practice. And then in the early 8th century, for reasons that scholars are still debating, but likely because of the rise and success of Islamic armies, Christians in the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, were beginning to question why all of a sudden were their armies losing. They hadn't lost in hundreds of years, so why are the armies losing? And so much like the Jews of old, who were often punished with foreign invaders because of their idolatry, there were some theologians in the Byzantine Empire that said we're losing to the Arabs precisely because we've become idolatrous. And so anyway, this is one of the scholarly explanations for where this comes from.
Okay.
So you basically, to make a long story short, in the middle of the 8th century, you get a series of emperors who insist that the church ends its practice of having icons in churches, and that the empire as a whole removes icons from important imperial spaces.
And we mean the Byzantine Empire.
We mean the Byzantine Empire.
Right.
And
We're
you
not
have to
talking about the Romans, right? Romans are gone. Okay.
Well, I mean,
Roman
they call themselves
Empire
the
first.
Romans, right?
Okay.
The word Byzantine is a made-up modern word. The people we call Byzantine self-defined as Romans. And so it is the continuation of the Roman Empire, just
Right.
not in Italy, right?
Gotcha.
So it's in the eastern part of the Mediterranean. Either way, these people are part of the Greek and Roman and Jewish tradition, and these people are Christian, right? It is the only real Christian empire in the world at the time. And but you have a real integration of church and state, and the state has the upper hand. And so the emperor is basically able to get his way. All right. And so all of the major churches, at least in the major cities, are purged of their icons, and individuals who defend the icons are arrested, exiled. There are some accounts of martyrdom and so forth, right? I mean, Roman emperors are ruthless. They kill when people get in their way.
Right.
Okay, so in the year 787, that all reverses itself. The emperor dies, a new emperor comes to the throne. They convene a council of bishops from all over the Christian world, both inside the empire and outside of it. And those bishops unanimously agree that icons are not only acceptable, but preferred. And they articulate a theology about the image that is largely derivative from St. John of Damascus, who had written in defense of icons during this period. Even though he himself did not live in the Byzantine Empire, he actually lived in the Arab Caliphate. Right, Damascus at this at this time was part of the caliphate, but he's, invested in the image issue, right? So again, so now at this point, 787, our man Theodore, who we're going to get to in just a second, he is about 15, 20 years old.
Okay.
All right. And he's going to grow up and he's going to become a monk and he's going to be at a monastery in what is modern day Turkey. So east of Constantinople or Istanbul, so into Turkey proper. And he becomes a prominent monk. He comes from an aristocratic family. He has wealthy and influential relatives. And even as a monk, in this period with icons restored, he is a bit of a hardliner about imperial interference in the church. And he doesn't like that very much. And he doesn't like it when his ecclesiastical superiors, right, get in bed with the empire, right? So he wants a hard line where bishops and influential priests should not be too cozy with the emperor, whoever that is. All right. So we have this period of the restoration of icons. Theodore is a monk who is gaining some prominence because he is repeatedly sticking his head out and criticizing. He doesn't live in Constantinople, but he was born there, and he's criticizing important members of both the church and the state for some of their policies. There's an emperor who wants to divorce his wife and get remarried, and in the Byzantine church, that's kind of against the rules. And so this priest of Hagia Sophia, the largest church in the world, performs the ceremony, and Theodore begins writing that this priest is basically a schismatic. He's broken the canons by marrying the emperor, even though he was probably forced by the emperor to do it. But Theodore goes almost a step further than anyone we've ever seen, and that he declares that anyone who receives communion from this priest is anathema, right? So that would mean the emperor, the empress, right? The entire imperial guard, basically anybody receiving communion in Hagia Sophia, again, the largest church in the world, they are on the wrong side of Christian morality because they are basically complicit with a kind of evil emperor and so forth. Now, and this is an emperor who likes icons, right? Right. We haven't even gotten to what happens when there's an emperor who doesn't. Okay. So anyway, so he builds this kind of reputation for himself as being a hardliner. All right. So let's jump a little bit.